Hi everyone, this is Jamie and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Google Apps Suite and what our 3rd through 12th graders have been up to so far this year. We started out by going to every single classroom and getting their Google Apps account set up, and I want to explain to you both what the students heard and what this means. We started the presentation by asking the kids, what does it mean to go Google? Some really great answers came up from all grade levels. A lot of them talked about researching, watching YouTube videos, anything they could imagine. But they really didn't know what it meant to go Google for a school. This is how we sold it to them. We said, imagine a world where there are no more flash drives. Imagine that you have access to everything that you're working on at school, at home. And what about stopping those fights with printers and then the battle of group projects with scheduling and all of the commitments that our kids have? So Google allows us to break down some of these barriers to the schoolwork that the kids are doing. We then explained what Google Apps is. We looked at it as defining it by its web-based email, calendar, and documents for collaborative study. And the greatest part is the kids have access to this anytime, anywhere. We heard reports last year during our pilot that a 5th grader would be sitting at her sister's softball game on the iPad finishing a project. Or students coming in to the next day in a 6th grade class excited for a test they were going to take online. The excitement level, the motivation, and the learning is really amazing to see happen. So to break down what the basic Google Apps are for you, the kids have Gmail, they have Calendar, and Google Drive. Now within Drive, think of that as their digital binder. That's where everything that they do lives. It's their storage, it's their location to keep all their files. And again, they have access at home, at school. They can start a project in the computer lab and go back to their classroom and finish it. They can be building something in the iPad lab and then go on at home and work on it there. So within Google Drive, there are 3 different apps. Documents or Docs, which is just like Word or Pages. There's Sheets, which is just like Excel. And then there's Slides, which we can see as PowerPoint or Keynote. They're basic, but they get the job done. And that's the power, is that everybody has the same basic access. I want to show you a quick video. What you're going to see here is a really humorous take on how Google Apps works.
Oh, here she comes. She's a scary lady. She's an angry tiger. She's a man gobbler. Eater. She's a man eater. Oh, here she comes. Watch out, boy.
So what you saw in that commercial was an example of 2 people collaborating on an idea. When the kids are working on this, there are different colored cursors, just like you saw, that helps them distinguish between who's doing the typing, and they are forced to kind of stay organized and work together. So one way to access this is by going just to google.com, and the kids sign in with their @mylcusd.net account. So they have an account that lets them know that they're different from the teacher's account. So we added the my in there for the domain. Or they can just log in at that special website that we built. We spent some time focusing on the concepts of collaboration, that when you're using a shared doc with Google, you're working in real time with your partners. Now the benefit is that everything is tracked. If somebody makes a mistake, you can go back in time with something called revision history, and then the student and teacher can kind of see who did what parts. It's a great tool for accountability, but also just sometimes you go off on a tangent and you've lost sight of the original project. You can go back and find out maybe where that occurred and get back on track. Or if somebody accidentally deleted something, it's all recoverable. So we're really happy about that. One thing we saw that was super powerful was a 5th grade teacher had her students work on a project about the book Summer of Monkeys. She assigned very specific tasks that had to be accomplished on each slide, and every student had to follow the directions while working on the bigger project. It was pretty amazing to see. And then this could be shared with a teacher or shared with their peers, and everybody can work on it. There were some really important notes that we taught the students about their accounts. Because this is a school account, it is public. We're trying to reinforce the concept of digital citizenship, that really nothing is private on the web. When you type something or when you input something, imagine that anybody can see it. So we wanted to reinforce that idea. And for us, being public means the teachers can see it. It's not public to the outside world unless we share it, and we have that restricted by grade level. So when we tell them that it's public within the school. So we want them to be aware of that. We're asking them to be professional and use integrity, to take care of each other. And then just remember that we stress this about 1,000 times. This is not private. So if they write something that is disrespectful or can be hurtful, it will be seen, and we really want them to take care of each other. We went over it one more time. Is this concept of accountability. With the tool that I mentioned earlier, revision history, you can go back in time and see by keystroke who typed in what parts of the paper. So for those all-stars who lead the groups, ended up kind of doing all of the work, it's going to show up. It'll show on the sidebar that so-and-so did 50% of the work, and then maybe the rest of the groups did 10 to 15%. But the part that's amazing is that you can track the changes, and if something did go wrong, you can go back and restore it. The other thing we talked about was having an email address that was dedicated to school business. So for now, it's free of spam. I've looked at some of my high school students' email accounts when trying to help them on something, and it's buried under Facebook notifications, like the messages that came from me. So this is a kind of a training ground for them on how to use email the right way. We went over norms for them in their accounts. One more time, no expectation of privacy. We asked them to use the devices that we're giving them with care. So we purchased Chromebooks, and we're having them use those in the classroom. We talked to them about the differences and challenges of classroom management when technology is in the classroom. So something as simple as giving your teacher attention when asked. We could do something like, close the lid of your laptop when you hear my voice, or something like that. We had to really help them think about how to be attentive when they can get sucked into being laptop zombies. And we also talked about how this is a privilege and it can be revoked. They all signed the user agreement, so we want them to use the devices with care and take care of each other. And it's really, this is a benefit, this is a tool, this is something that can be transformative for them in the classroom. One way that we're making sure we're taking care of everybody is with a couple products. We're using Backupify, which gives us backups of everything that happens, from commenting to calendars to email to their documents. And we also are using a product called Google Vault. Some of the features that Backupify offered wasn't covered in Vault when we originally purchased them. Now Google's doing all of this for free, so we're excited to save some money there. The last two tools I want to show you are Hapara and Classroom. Classroom is a way to organize the students. So I can post homework on Classroom, and the students can turn it in right through Classroom. So it really unifies the experience. Without Classroom, what we'd see happening is teachers would have to get emails from the students of all their files. They could share them, they could notify them, and that can be quite a mess if you have anywhere from 30 to 150 students. So Google Classroom helps unify that. All the students' work is kind of stored in one place. Now Hapara, I want to spend a few more minutes talking about. Hapara is how we have access to the student work. So again, this is that idea of the binder. What you're seeing in those little boxes is a representation of each student and their work. So for example, I can open up Maria's on the top right, and I can quickly see if she turned in her homework, and I can see when it was last updated. And I can also see who was the last person to work on it. So for group projects, again, it's this great accountability of who's doing what part, and we can take care of the kids. This is also a way for them to have to not submit work. It's all done digitally. So if it's in their Google Drive folder for language arts, the teacher already has a copy from the very beginning. What this is going to allow is for serious revision and commenting from the teacher. That's the potential. So now remember, everything I'm telling you is the dream. This is where we want to go, and it'll take time to get there. But we have teachers already doing this. So as the students are working, teachers can go in and workshop the intro paragraph of an essay before waiting for the student to turn it in and then having to go back and make serious revisions. That to me as a student was always frustrating, that maybe if somebody would have saw me go off track in the very beginning, it would have been a much better experience. So this is one of the benefits we see of having Hapara. We can get teachers in there having conversations with the kids much, much faster. But imagine we can also have kids talking to each other. They can share documents and do some of the basic revisions, do some surface error corrections before it gets to the teacher, and then the teacher can focus on the big content. And in conclusion, I just want to wrap up by saying kind of why we're doing all of this. If you haven't heard about the SAMR model, I want to just give you a brief overview. This is a way for us to kind of measure and guide the teachers in their technology integration. There's an amazing book called Disrupting the Classroom that came out a couple years ago, and it really talks about how in the last 20 years we've had computers in the classroom, but we really haven't seen growth or change, because what's happening is the teachers are simply substituting one tool for another, and that's not bad. That's a great place to start. Just having a digital copy of something is amazing, but we can do much more. So let me give you some examples. A teacher assigns a writing assignment. Rather than having the kids handwrite, they're going to type. That's substitution. There's really no functional change of the product. They're simply typing versus handwriting. We can also see this something as the student is using the internet to research. They could also use an encyclopedia. There's no difference directly in the substitution of the encyclopedia for the internet. Now, of course, we can argue there's greater access to varied sources, but again, in its most basic sense, it's just a substitution. Where we start to see change is when you augment, when something with the technology gives us a tool that we wouldn't have had otherwise without the technology. Spell check is the most perfect example. When you're typing an essay, you have access to spell check and grammar check, and you can make some adjustments. Or let's say the assignment is to do some research and you need to find a primary source, something written in the last 100 years and something written in the last 5 years. Now that's something that's a little bit harder to do with an encyclopedia. So using timestamps and using date ranges and using the internet in that way can really augment a project. Now, if we cross the threshold or go deeper into the pool with modification, this is where the original task looks much different than it did before because of technology. So as I showed you with Google Docs, the ability to comment and add revisions, imagine that the teacher then gets a copy of the essay and types comments right on there mid-process. That would have not been possible without the Google account or with a laptop. So that's modification. The original product now has comments going partway through to the student. We can also do peer review at this point live with them in the classroom. Now, redefinition is the ultimate goal, but again, as I mentioned, every step is really important. Sometimes substitution is enough, sometimes augmentation is enough, and sometimes modification is enough. Redefinition is where we can really transform. We can take an original idea that perhaps had its merit, but now we can go even further. So imagine the student that wrote the essay. They have a blog, they post that blog, and then they have peers in another state that can read it and give them feedback. One of the elements of Common Core is the real world audience. How do we safely let kids have a real world audience that goes beyond their teacher? I can speak firsthand as a classroom teacher that when I expanded the people reading the essays to beyond just being me, the work greatly improved. When I had speaking projects where the students made videos and I invited other classes in to see the students' work, their work improved. So anytime we can take an original idea and use technology to redefine it, meaning that it would have been previously inconceivable without the technology, that's when we see great things happen. So in closing, Google Apps is going to allow us to do many of the things that we hadn't had access to before. We're able to have things digitally, go paperless, organize the students with calendar, and send email. So I know some of you might have some questions and I'd love to answer them. You can reach me at jl@lcusd.net. I'm always happy to come out and speak to groups, PTAs, foundation, whatever you need. I'd love to clarify anything and answer questions. So once again, my email is jl@lcusd.net. Please let me know what your questions are if you have any comments. I'd also love to hear feedback that you've gotten from the kids as this experiment's been going on. Have a wonderful day.